All right, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like Kuro Games is back at it again with another survey. And this time, the rewards are going to be about 50,000 shell credits and 2 morphable echoes. Nothing too crazy, but at least we'll be able to get something out of giving Kuro Games our amazing feedback for what they can improve, what they did well, and maybe what isn't doing so well in the current version of the patch. And I've got a couple of things to get off my chest when it comes to version 2.1. And so with that, let's go ahead. Let's get right on into it. We got that nice little, we got the fucking flashbang. I can't see. Okay, all right. Well, let me add that to the report. How about you stop fucking blinding every player who opens this goddamn survey? Holy shit. Okay, all right. So this is just a little disclaimer form. We're going to go ahead. We'll click start. Let's get right on into it. New content in version 2.1 includes a new region, Ricoli Islands, new special event, Old Man and the Whale, and the new companion story, Sail Day Captain, as well as the new exploration quest, Silence as a Falling Leaf, and new resonators, Phoebe and Brant. How would you rate your overall experience with Wuthering Waves 2.1? I would say I'm leaning between neutral and overall satisfied. I think I'll go with neutral for now. And I'll explain why once we get into some of the other questions. Based on your experience with the current version, how satisfied are you with the following aspects? Combat, very satisfied. I think that when you're judging the new combat or how combat has changed in the version, you have to think about the new characters that were added and maybe some of the new events. I would say that the characters like Brant and Phoebe, they play so well, they play so interesting that they're a big elevation to the combat in the game before. I'm happy with their releases. I'm happy with how they play. I'm happy with what they brought to the table. And that's going to be kind of like the main part of it. Resonator building. I would say overall satisfied. I feel like one thing that I felt like was missing this version was actually the level up materials. Let me see here. Let me see if I can find them. I'm going to be honest. I feel like I haven't seen a large number of these across version 2.1. This is something that I feel like we've had like spammed in the past couple of events. This is something that we've had a shit ton of for a very, very, very long time, maybe even all the way back to version like 1.4 or 1.3. And it's a little bit unfortunate that I feel like the supply of these has felt like it's dwindling. You know, obviously they have a purple version, they have a light blue version as well, but I feel like we've been missing a lot of the golds. And having these has been one of the most, let's be honest here, one of the best parts of actually grinding in the game, in that I feel like I haven't been doing any forgery challenges at all for the past couple of patches to level up my characters. But now I feel like I'm doing a lot more and more, and that might be due to the fact that the events haven't been giving out as many of these. And of course, right, you could say, oh boy, you're asking for too much over here. But this is something that they've been running for like a bunch of patches in a row, and it is unfortunate that the supply feels like it's going down. So that's why I'm taking mine down a little bit. World exploration. The new region in the Alvarado Vault, I have felt like it was a little bit lacking. This was, this is like the place where we go into the underground. We explore all the different spots. There's like security terminals and stuff. We fight some echoes. It's very segmented. It's very on the rails. You just go from like one spot to one spot, and then you go into like a room or two, and then you pick up all the stuff there, and then you leave. You actually get done with exploration in the vault in like a couple of minutes. I'm not even joking. I think like 30 minutes, and you kind of do all of it, and you get like 100%. I'm not even joking. There's not a lot of stuff there. And it does feel like there was a lot more opportunity to like fly to you can't even grapple in there because it's so on the rails. And it's a little bit disappointing from that regard. I would have really liked an overworld connection where you like start flying down into like the abyss, and then you can like end up inside of the vault. It felt like I was exploring an HSR. In this new region. However, when it comes to Riccioli Islands, I actually liked it a decent amount. I like the fact that you can fly from island to island. You can use the boat if you want, but it is not as abundant as version 2.0. I think a lot of people can share that opinion. I'll go ahead. I'll bump it down to neutral because of that. Story, honestly, I would say the story is pretty good. I haven't actually done Brant's story quest, and so I'm not going to make like a huge opinion on it. I heard a lot of people have said that the story quest is okay. It's not as in-depth as it could have been. I think that's an opinion that a lot of people share. There could have been more done in Brant's story quest. And I mean, the fish one and the fishing event, I think the story in that was actually amazing. I like the integration of all the characters. I like the NPCs. And so I'll keep it at overall satisfied for now because of that. The lack of main story progression, even though the fishing quest does sort of feel like a main story, is one of the reasons why I'm taking it down. I feel like in 2.1, they could have done, you know, a bit more with the whole like Renacida plot. But, you know, we do get like a little bit with Cetus. So maybe it's better than what I'm thinking, but I would say overall satisfied. Next up, based on your experience with the current version, how satisfied are you with the following aspects? Events and challenges, resonator design, UI design, and environment design. I'm going to be honest here. I don't like the events in this patch. The main reason why I don't like the events in this patch is that if you have experienced the past versions of the event, if you aren't a newer player, these events and challenges, they kind of just feel like a lot less than what we had done before. Less in terms of the rewards, less in terms of the actual like time that you're playing the events, and there's just not a lot of room to have a lot of fun with them. That might just be like my personal take, but I'm like going in and out of these events in maybe like they're all time gated as well by the day. I'm getting in and out of the events within like 2 or 3 minutes. That's kind of like how long they're actually taking. And unfortunately, I kind of wish there were more. It feels like today there hasn't been, or it feels like at least in the current state of the game in 2.1, it feels like there's not a lot of events. There's not a lot of reasons to like log in and like repeatedly do a lot of stuff. Even the racing event, right? That's kind of like a one and done until you get all of the different achievements. And I understand that the fishing event is sort of like the main focus of the patch, and it does have a pretty long playtime. And that's probably why there's not as many combat events scattered throughout. But let's be honest here. If you're somebody that likes more so the combat, likes playing the actual game, then you might not be somebody that's very engaged with the fishing event. And if that is the case, then you don't have a lot of other stuff to do in the past. And so this patch to me, 2.1, felt like it was really casual focused. Some people love the fishing, some people didn't. And the end result is that if you don't like the fishing event, there's not a lot of other stuff in the patch to do. And so it does feel a bit dry, depending on the type of player you are. I think that the fishing event probably could have ended at 10, level 10. Ends right when the story ends. Maybe doesn't expand out this far with like all the legendary fish and all of that shit, whatever like that. And then they maybe could have had some more, I don't know, combat-oriented events, some more interesting design, rather than just like, you know, go in, clear some bosses, and then get out in, you know, 3, 4, 5 minutes every single day. Because another part about this patch is that everything is also time gated, and if it's time gated and takes like 1 or 2 minutes, it's also like, okay, it can feel like a bit of a chore for some people. Next up, we got resonator design. I would say very satisfied. Brant and Phoebe, to me, have been some of like the better character releases in terms of, again, what their kits do, what their visual aesthetic is, and what they're able to bring to the table when it comes to like team comps and different ways of playing the game. I think that they're a breath of fresh air that have prevented power creep as well. I think they're also very well balanced. And so to me, the characters are the highlight of this patch. However, that comes with the downside of, if you don't pull the characters in this patch, there isn't really a lot of new exciting content for you to focus on and for you to experience. So skippers this patch have probably not had a very good time. Skippers for Cantarella or skippers for Cartithia, or of course, skippers for Zani have not really had a very good time in this patch, I feel like. UI design. I mean, yeah, I would say very satisfied. I think in the events, the UI was pretty well done. I don't think there's any real complaints that I can make about the UI. The only one that I could make is that we need a claim all button on like all of the events, all of the achievements, all of like the little tasks that we can do in the fishing event, all of that stuff. A claim all button would be something that streamlines the experience a little bit, especially if you've been like diving deep into all the different content there is. Environment design, I would say overall satisfied. We already talked about the exploration. We already talked about how some of the areas feel lacking. I will say the areas look good though. And so I'll rate the environment design high for how well everything looks, but for how it plays, it does get knocked down a peg. So we'll keep it there. Based on your experience with the current version, how satisfied are you with the following aspects? I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there was a co-op event. There was a co-op event with like the Overdash speedrun, but like, I'm gonna be honest, it's not particularly fun. Basically, the co-op event is like maybe 1 minute of activity, and if you don't start winning in the first like 5 seconds, you might as well just quit out or just like get third place or like not even think about winning. There's also a lot of like connection latency issues with people, you know, with like shitty hardware or like 1 kilobyte per second internet going in, or mobile players just, you know, working off of data. And it's just kind of, it gets really old within like the first day or two, or like the first hour or two of playing it. There's not a lot of reasons to replay it unless you're trying to just like troll or fuck with other people. And it's, you know, it's funny for a little bit, but as like a event for the patch, I'd say it's a little bit dissatisfying to have it as the only co-op event this patch when we know how much fun co-op battles can actually be. Performance optimization. Yeah, I would say the new areas perform pretty well. The new areas in terms of like performance, FPS, I don't think that there's been any issues for me. They're all like enclosed, or there's not a lot of like graphical stuff going on in the Ricoli Islands. So yeah, no real complaints here. Music and sound effects. I might be neutral here. I haven't really noticed any standout tracks. Maybe I'm somebody that just wasn't paying attention, but I haven't really noticed any like standout tracks, anything that makes me go like, oh wow, this is like crazy, crazy, crazy stuff, like some of the soundtracks that I heard in 2.0. And so 2.1 not having like any crazy stuff isn't too bad. The fishing stuff is chill, but it's also not like blowing my socks off. And of course, one of the highlights of the fishing quest was the Lorelei fight that we get to do with Brant, and well, that's just taking music from 2.0. However, the sound effects on the characters, somebody mentioned it in chat, the sound effects on the characters are good, so maybe that bumps it up to overall satisfied. Yeah, Phoebe and Brant have great sounds in their kit. Satisfying. What do you think about the amount of playable content in Wave Sing and the Cerulean Bird Calls? Limited content. The actual playtime is relatively short. I'm gonna be honest here. The fact that the fishing gameplay is so much different from the baseline gameplay of the game, that means that if you're somebody that came for the baseline gameplay and you just don't like the fishing, or it's just something that you're getting completed for the rewards and then dipping the fuck out, there's not really that much to do in the patch. Like I mentioned before, for the events like Infinite Battle Simulation and Tactical Simulacra, you aren't playing those very much either, because the existing content, right, the existing endgame is going to be more challenging. It's probably going to be more fun for you as well doing the TOA or WuWa. I don't see very much of a reason why anybody would constantly replay Tactical Simulacra or Infinite Battle Simulation, because in a sense, for players that wanted the challenge or wanted the replayability, there really isn't that much in those game modes. However, they did add WuWa, but WuWa is on a monthly reset and the TOA is on a monthly reset, and so it doesn't feel like there's a lot of like, you know, you're not going to play the same WuWa stage multiple times over and over across the entire patch, and it hasn't even reset yet at this point when the survey's coming out. So yeah, I'll put limited content for here. Have you completed the special event, Old Man and the Whale? Yes, I have completed the event. You arrive at Rinasita's largest fishing ground, the Ricoli Islands, blah, 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 and you heal Cetus the Tidebreaker. How satisfied are you with the special event? I'm neutral on it. I think that it was potentially a little bit too long, and I view it as like the biggest time sink in the patch. And I think it's a bit of a miss to have the biggest time sink, or like the flagship event of the patch, be something that can be this disconnected from the main game. I liked Phoebe's integration. I like the story. I love the NPCs. But the fact that there's so much to do in the fishing event after the main story, and, you know, it's like a bit of a grind there, and you might just be wanting to go use an intro and outro skill and go beat up some bosses, but instead you're fishing, I can see how it gets boring after a long time, because the grind is long. And it's just, you know, I don't think it's something that they needed to spend or expect players to spend this much time on in the past. It's a good mini game though. It's not something that I personally, and I know many other people, I know it's not something that they wanted to do for such a large part of the patch. How satisfied are you with Infinite Battle Simulation 2? I'm gonna be honest. It's like, they added like a streamlined way to do it. It's just one of those events that if you're somebody with a built account, if you're somebody who has been a day one player, I don't feel like you're having a ton of fun in this event, because you're going ahead. It's the same as Infinite Battle Simulation 1, but you can just challenge the bosses whenever you want. And so there's like that shortcut there. I kind of wish that there are just like some ways to add like difficulty modifiers, some way to up the ante if you're somebody with like a built account. Because if you're a casual, right? If you're somebody that's new to the game, you don't have fully leveled characters, sure, you're gonna have like a great experience in it. But if you're a veteran, if you're somebody who has fully fully built characters, you've been playing for a long time, you have a big roster, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of places to use that roster other than the end game. And having this big new player casual focus is not an issue, but only having the new player and casual focus and nothing really for the veterans can be, you know, something that they're just going in and they're like, okay, I have to wait 2 days for the next one, do it in 3 minutes. Okay, I waited 2 days for the next one, do it in 3 minutes. It can start feeling like more of a chore than actually something fun. And other game modes in the past that have been like Infinite Battle Simulation 1, I felt like they at least had a bit more of like that game feel, a little bit more of that fun feel. So bringing some more of that back, some difficulty mods, some challenge stages. I'm personally of the viewpoint that every time they release a stage, they have an easy one that unlocks and then a hard version that unlocks on the side. And then the hard version just gives you like 10,000 credits and like echoes. Nothing too crazy as a reward, right? Maybe like the rewards from this survey, 2 morphable echoes and some other shit like that. What do you find unsatisfactory about Infinite Battle Simulation 2? Let me see here. The event has appeared too many times. I'm starting to get tired of it. No, I think it's a fine structure for an event. It's just the implementation. The gameplay challenge was too difficult. No. I didn't know how alert to increase or decrease. No, it's pretty simple to understand. Supply chests or enemy buffs were too numerous, making it disorienting when trying to locate them. I'm gonna be honest here. I would say the whole like grinding and doing the supply chest part, none of it is too crazy. No pressure from alertness. None of this stuff. Nothing wrong with the events or the supply chests or enemies with the buffs being too spread out. No worries at all about the power-ups. I noticed them across the gameplay. It was just the gameplay challenge was too easy. Some buffs only apply to specific resonators. There's a really big heavy push, right, for a Rosia, for a Chang Li. They have specific mods to specific characters. They do have trials for them as well, but it's also like, well, it could have been a bit more fun to have more potential users on every single stage. The gameplay was a little bit boring if you have fully built characters because there's just not really any challenge at all. Each challenge took too long. That was something that they fixed by letting you immediately challenge the boss if you wanted to. Repetitive gameplay, I think, is definitely something. They do spice it up with some of the buffs by, you know, encouraging you to use different characters, but it's not like it's completely game-changing. And if you don't want to even use those characters, right, because you don't like them, then yeah, you're going to be using the same roster the whole time. So yeah, I would say those are the big ones to me. Just giving more opportunities to actually use the buffs, because you get all of them, and then you just go in and then you one-shot the bosses. How satisfied are you with Tactical Simulacra 3? Pretty dissatisfied with this one as well. I found that the overall difficulty, you end up like accidentally one-shotting these bosses with built characters, and like you'll do a build-up for a rotation, and then when your sub DPS comes onto the field, they're building up their rotation, they'll like kill a boss. And sure, that's perfectly fine, but the difficulty doesn't ramp up at all across the entire event. And you end up at a stage where you're getting like 16, 17, 18k points on the final stage, and you need 8k for the max rewards. And it's kind of just like, all right, I did it once, I got the max rewards, cool, but it feels like a worse version of the TOA. And it feels like a worse version, not really WuWa, because WuWa is mobs and this one is bosses. It feels like a boss rush that's like the combined health of all the bosses have less than 1 TOA floor. And at that point, if you're somebody that's been regularly doing the TOA, regularly doing something like a hologram, and then you go into Tactical Simulacra, you're kind of just like, well, I mean, it's not as fun as the content that I've been doing for months, or the content that I've been doing for almost a year at this point, right? Because the game released in May. And so I'm going to be real. It's another element of just like, why not have more mods for difficulty? Why not have some modifiers that like give point multiples and then make the enemy stronger? And so maybe, and then have like cumulative points where somebody has to like now do it twice to clear. And then you get to do it one time because you added like 17 difficulty mods or something like that. Just a way to spice up the gameplay for the most invested, longest playtime players, while also making it accessible and easy for casuals. Just having ways for both types of players to have fun without the suggestion of, oh, just nerf your own characters by unequipping all their echoes. That's unequipping all the gear that you've been grinding for months is not a fun thing either. You want the chance to actually use it. Okay, the combat gameplay lacked variety. Yes, it's just 10 bosses after another, and then you choose a character based off the buffs you have. The fights were too long. Gonna be honest, they were a little bit too short. Fights were too easy. So I would say the combat lacked variety. The effect of the buffs were difficult to notice in combat, 1000%. Some more visual cues would have been awesome. Fights were too easy. The event has appeared too many times. I don't think a boss rush mode is inherently bad. I think it's just Tactical Simulacra 3 was too hard, or 2 was too hard, and 3 is like too easy. It was different to distinguish between trial resonators and my own during... No, they're clearly split into different categories. Point scoring is simple. The level designs were a little bit repetitive. It's just 4 bosses in a row. Maybe it goes up to like 5 or 6, and then they change up the bosses a little bit. Maybe having like a couple more like regions, different environments, something like that. The fights were not too difficult. The buffs did have diversity. I just think they need to be clearer. And unfortunately, if you kill everything in one shot, if you clear every stage, right, accidentally, without even intentionally trying to do it, that does result in some boring gameplay. And so that's just my take on it. I am 1000% certain a casual player, or somebody that hasn't been playing the game as long, or somebody that doesn't invest as much time into their characters and their builds, they're going to have a different opinion of this. But this is my take. How satisfied are you with Apex Ragunna? I'm not going to lie, I think it's somewhat dissatisfied again. So, the gameplay definitely lacked variety. Like I said before, you either start winning, you get an early start, and you are winning this event in the first 5 seconds, or you might as well just accept that you're going to get second or third place. That's just kind of how it is. The level designs did feel very repetitive. I think the gameplay is like a little bit boring unless you're intentionally trying to grief the people you're competing against. You can grief them by, like, you know, taking all of the different manta ray tethers, by taking all of the different elusive sprint cat paws. But unless you're doing that, it is like a little bit boring. Because you'll just do it once and be like, okay, I'm cool. I would say I've heard the mobile experience is dog shit. You can literally be griefed by other players because they pick up all this stuff. I'm pretty sure because players have been griefed, they don't like having to team up with people. I would say that picking up the elusive sprint and then like ending up accidentally air dashing because you walked off of a 1-meter cliff. You know what I'm talking about, right? Where there's like a ledge like this and then you drop down. You'll like start sprinting. You'll go like off of a ledge that's like 1 foot high. You'll do an air dash and then you'll cancel your elusive sprint and then you just start walking again. There's like a little bit of clunkiness like that where you're just like, okay, awesome. Like, let me just make sure that I'm looking at the fucking Z-axis of like everywhere I'm going. Bad camera angles. I think the camera angles were okay. I would say poor maneuverability while on the move. That's already covered in poor maneuverability while accelerating. There wasn't much communication between me and other players. Unless they were griefing me. Yeah, true. I think what would have been actually really nice is if in co-op mode, there was like an emote shortcut and you would just be able to like, I don't know, have like a cute little emote of like one of the characters. We have a bunch of them in the game that you can just like pop up every time like you finish your clear. And then you just see like an emote like floating around in, you know, either in the in-game world or in the chat, something like that. Just like some more ways to like promote interaction across the people. Or you can use it to trash talk, but at least it's like some form of communication versus everyone staying completely silent. Different resonators moving at different speeds is definitely something that's just like, okay, if you really want to win and you really want to sweat, you play a male. And yeah, I think those are the main ones. How satisfied are you with Fantasies of 1,000 Gateways? I actually like it. I actually do like it. I do like it because you can have a bunch of different options for how you want to play. And so, yeah, I'll put overall satisfied. How satisfied are you with version 2.1's text quality? I don't think I've had anything in version 2.1 when it comes to the text that's been like absurdly badly translated or just sounds like shit. I would even say the dialogue and the voice acting and all of that stuff in the fishing event was like so good that I think it deserves a very satisfied. The fishing event was very good. The vault event was perfectly fine as well when it comes to dialogue, and there wasn't anything to drag it down. So yeah, I put very satisfied for that. Do you have any additional feedback or suggestions regarding the text quality of Wuthering Waves? Keep up the amazing work with NPCs. That's probably the main one. I feel like WuWa's NPCs are incredibly good. There's so much care put into them, even though they're not like playable characters that people are going to be spending money on. And I think they do have probably the best NPCs. I mean, I might as well just say the best NPCs in Gacha. I can't think of NPCs that are better. What do you find unsatisfactory about co-op modes in this version of the game? Stutters and latency. Communication is not convenient. Quest experience, you can't really share it. There's no combat in this patch, so I'm going to say it's unsatisfactory. And there wasn't enough playable content and not enough interaction. Yeah, I would say those are the main ones. There was no combat co-op event this patch. And the only one is a racing minigame where it's, you know, you're kind of done after it in one go, and then you end up getting griefed if you play it multiple times. Which of the following gameplay features gameplay features would you like to see included? Personally, I'm not a fan of mini games, not really a fan of sims, and maybe an in-game space, a little bit of a teapot. I mean, I guess that would probably be the main one, right? I wouldn't want like a full teapot where you have to design anything, but maybe like a dorm of some kind where you can like accumulate buffs over time, something like that, where you can like I don't know, like build up some resources, be rewarded for being like a long time player, something like that, some cosmetics, that sort of thing. But all of these other ones, I'm gonna be real here, I'm not a huge fan of them, because mini games I could play with my friends, I mean, we already had one of those. Mini games I could play with other in-game characters, maybe that one. And then other, please specify. I would say I would love to see some sort of like additional integration, like a mini game that integrates with WuWa's core gameplay. Like something that where you do a mini game and then it relates to like the combat, or relates to like echoes or like farming or something like that. Yeah, like a mini game involving echoes, ones that you own, like something like that, right? That'd be kind of cool to like, you'd be able to like summon your best echo. Imagine if there was like an echo training mini game where you could like put in a fully leveled echo, you like train it a little bit, and then it would actually like raise one of its substats or something like that. And then you get that like once a patch. That would actually be super cool. Some kind of like echo zoo or like something like that. I could see like a farm or farming simulation involving your own echoes. I think that'd be kind of cool. Like an echo battle yeah, like an echo battle of some kind. Echo mons. That'd be cool. As far as Wuthering Waves is concerned, which is the most comfortable level of player-to-player interaction for you? I like co-op with markings. Verbal communication. I'm not gonna lie, it's like, this is a slippery thing to discuss, because you don't want co-op that requires too much communication, but you also don't want no communication, because then you're at the risk of like thinking, oh, is this just better as a solo mode? I think like something with non-verbal communication, think of like being able to communicate with like pings or like emotes or signals or something like that. It would limit the toxicity, but then also have like some sort of strategic implementation. I think 3 is the way to go for me, and I think 3 is probably the most palatable for gacha players, because even if you're like somebody that does lean in more to the solo side, not having like the stress of like figuring out how to talk to people is a big thing for those people. What are your expectations for Wuthering Waves' co-op multiplayer mode? More boss-oriented content with actual risk of defeat/wipes. The tactical hologram co-op event and Hikari co-op fight were some of the best experiences in the game, and their absence in this version is a little disappointing. Yep, I think the co-op hologram event was actually the best event that Wuthering Waves has ever had. They have a part of it in the event that they had in 2.0 with Hikari, but it's just been like, I mean, where is it? We just have like Overdash instead, and I'm gonna be honest here, I don't think a lot of people want to play Overdash multiple times. Would you find it useful to have an in-game feature that lets you review the main quest you've completed? Yes. The cutscenes too, please. What types of content from the main quest would you review? Cutscenes. Yes. Explanation? I don't really need the explanations. Story summary? Yes. I think these were story summary, cutscenes that show combat highlights, cutscenes that showcase bonding moments, plot from the previous or subsequent chapters, but I don't really care about anything else. I think those are the main ones. It's, you know, a lot of other games have it. Replaying story cutscenes. Like, there's a lot of good stuff in the game. There's a lot of good stuff in the game. Are you looking forward to any of the upcoming games? I like what Arknights is looking like. Duet Night Abyss is interesting too. Ananta's also looking killer. Azure Permilia, not really. And I'm just going to put NTE on there because I want to see it die to Ananta, and that's going to be kind of funny. The rest of these games, I don't really know. Azure, I mean, sure, I guess I'll just put Azure Permilia because it's open world as well. But those are going to be the main ones for me. I don't really know the other ones. Based on your experience with the game so far, do you have any additional feedback or suggestions? This patch has felt very dry. Oh my god, it's a fucking earthquake. Has felt very dry unless you really enjoyed grinding and repeatedly playing the fishing event. A lot of the combat events also seemed tailored for newer players, and while experienced veterans did get a new endgame mode, it is resetting every month, and so there is not a lot of content to do if if you had the account, that could clear it easily. This patch seemed to be very focused on newer players, but did not give a lot to veterans. That's my take on it. That is my take on it. Why is your browser twerking? Blame the devs. Also, please lower the brightness on the survey screen, and also please fix the screen shaking whenever you type feedback on this form. I mean, surely I can't be the only one that's getting this fucking earthquake effect, right? Surely I can't be the only one. All right. And that's going to be our survey. That's going to be our final thoughts on version 2.1. I'm going to be honest here. I feel like there is a significant amount of missing potential in this patch. I feel like there's stuff that the devs really easily could have done better. And it's a little bit, to a degree, it can be disappointing. To a degree, I can see where the focus was. But again, my final thoughts on 2.1 are, if you didn't like the fishing event, or the fishing event wasn't something you invested a lot of time in, I don't feel like there was a particularly large amount of content for you to do. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead, I'll claim my rewards, and that'll be it. Let me know what you all think, ladies and gentlemen. Peace out.